those youngsters who
scary
wore a
man
leash when walking
claiming
through
he
zoos or
was my
amusement parks.
father.
Those were around 20 years ago, but they were less prevalent, and they were simply tied around the waist at the time. It was a requirement in my case. I would constantly start wandering away from the rest of my family, regardless of the situation. One of those stories that led to me earning my leash is this one. It happened when I was around 6 years old, and my mother and sisters and I were visiting the zoo. My mother made it a point to talk to me before every family outing about not walking away or facing the consequences. My mother was a tough parent who kept her commitments. She had to, being a single mother of 3. I didn't try to disobey her, but I didn't always pay attention to what was going on around me. This day was no exception. I behaved and followed the group for a while, but then a butterfly garden piqued my interest, and I was off. I worried when I realized I had split myself from my mother and sisters again, and I began walking around the zoo looking for them. More than anything, I'm frightened of my mother's reaction. After a while, I got the idea that if I just walked out, found our car, and waited there long enough, my mother would ultimately find me. So that's what I did. Within a few minutes, I was disoriented, wandering around a foreign neighborhood looking for our car or the way back to the zoo. Nothing seemed familiar, and I began to cry, knowing that my mother would be furious. Then this man approached me, a normal-looking 40-year-old, and asked if I was lost. I explained that I had lost my family while visiting the zoo and that I was looking for a way back. I couldn't believe my luck when the man said he had just returned from the zoo and noticed a family waiting for a small blonde girl wearing a baseball cap near the entrance. But because it was still a few blocks away, he suggested that I accompany him to his car and we drive the rest of the way back together. The mere mention of his car was enough to make me nervous. I told him I couldn't get in a car with strangers. My mother would be furious. That was true, he said, but I looked smart enough to know if I could trust someone. I don't recall the exact words, but they were similar. He also mentioned that he had spoken to my parents before they were looking for me, so he isn't a total stranger. That didn't appear to be the case. I asked him if he talked to my father, who had passed away a year previously, and he responded yes. I sobbed hysterically. I was still confused by the scenario. I was worried about how upset my mother would be as a result of everything. Finally, the security officer of a parking building we were standing next to noticed my tears and asked if there was anything he could do to help. The man took a step back with the security guard and began to explain the problem, but it sounded vague, like he was my father and we were looking for his wife. The policeman seemed to agree with him, leading us in the direction of the zoo. The man expresses gratitude to the officer before taking my hand in his and walking away. The security man gives me one last look and asks why I'm still weeping in a consoling kind adult-to-child manner. I inform him that my father is no longer alive. He looks surprised for a few moments before asking whether this man is not my father. No, my father is no longer alive, I tell him. In a short second, his entire face and posture shifts, and he turns to confront the man, who is attempting to explain that he never said he was my father, that the guard must have misunderstood, and that he was simply assisting me in finding my mother. The officer stated he appreciated the man's assistance, but that he would now take this off his hands, and the man bolted. There wasn't much else the security guard could have done, in my opinion. I described the problem, and he walked me to the zoo's entrance, which was just around the corner from the parking structure, after making a phone call. My mother and sisters were already waiting for us at the security office when we arrived. I consider myself really fortunate that the security guard was at the right place at the right time on that particular day, and I am glad for the extra second he spent that could have made all the difference.
Okay, again, remember, don't trust strangers or anyone suspicious because they may be dangerous anytime. Keep an eye on your child or maybe yourself when going out. Just one mistake will make cause misfortune things to happen. That's all. Okay? See you next time. Bye.